The very first thing I ever turned, and this was back in the days when I still did a lot of flat work, was a little mushroom type drawer pull. I needed something to match the drawer that I was doing, couldn't find anything online, and after scratching my head figured out how to do it, and I didn't even have a lathe at the time. So, and this is the type of drawer pull that I made. And since I didn't have a lathe at the time, I had to improvise. My improvising, basically, I did not have a lathe. After scratching my head for a little bit, took one of the screws that I use, cut the head off, chucked it up in the drill press, used a block of wood for a tool rest and one of my bench chisels, and proceeded to carve a block down into one of the drawer pulls that I needed, and that was like, oh, this is fun. Got a lathe not too much longer after that. So I start with a square, or basically a cube of wood, drill a 1/8 inch hole in the middle of it, and when I do this on the drill press, I use a depth stop to make sure I don't drill through the bottom of it. So block here, depth stop is set to right there so I don't go all the way through. Side note on these, if you're drilling these, they are kind of difficult to hold with just your fingers. They can spin out. I'll usually have a straight edge across the back, or if you've got a pair of those vice grips or gripping clamps that'll hold it like that, that makes it a lot safer. Okay, so these are the screws that I use, 1¼ inch, number 10. They are a sheet metal screw. They do have a round head on the back which seats nicely inside the drawer. So this is a mandrel that I made for doing these on the wood lathe. This is a piece of end-grained sugar maple or hard maple. I do have a number 1 here so I know where to seat it so the jaws match up every single time when I put it into the chuck. And the way I did it, turned it down first, drilled a hole with a Jacob's chuck in the tailstock. Then I flipped it over, used my hollow chisel mortiser, drilled a square hole in it, pushed the screw in, and epoxied it into place. So number 1 there, this is my number 1 jaw. And since I already have the dents in there from multiple uses, it makes it easy to fit this back into place. And now it is ready to mount the door pull block. So threading these on, it always helps to lube it up a little bit. I use a little bit of this. This is butcher's wax. It's a carnauba wax with a little bit of solvent. It's a bowling alley wax too. So a little bit on the screw. And this just helps it thread on with a lot less work. And I do spin these on by hand. And it's ready to turn. First part of this, got a cube. We want to turn it down to a cylinder. And I start near the end. That's a pretty good job for being around. I am using a 45-degree bevel bowl gouge. I use bowl gouges for everything. You can use skew chisels. You can use spindle roughing gouges. Next, I like to round this over. Not bad for a bowl turner. Next part, I want to start making, this is essentially cove turning, which is very common for spindles. I do like to have a little bit of a square shoulder here, and then I like to kind of do my cove turning in here. If you run this all the way out to a taper. That fine edge likes to crack and split a little bit. So we'll start by nibbling in here, making a cove. And that's pretty much it, other than sanding and finishing. And they do look kind of like chess pieces, so I guess if you don't mind having holes in the bottom of your chess pieces and putting felt on the bottom of them, you can do those the same way. And I have found if I use like a wipe-on poly for a finish on these, sometimes they're kind of slick, and when I try to unscrew it, I have to actually use a piece of 400 grit sandpaper to get enough of a grip on it to unscrew it. But that's your simple mushroom type drawer pull. My styles vary a little bit. I can round this over, get that a little cleaner with the sandpaper. I do like a different curve here than I do here. But mostly in here I'm just trying to leave enough room just to get my fingers in. So it pulls. This is not one that if you have a locking type drawer on that you can actually pull real hard on, but you know, just enough to get your fingers under. So here's another view of turning the cove. Nibble in. That's not bad. If you want to use a detail gouge like this, which will tend to be a lot more pointy, don't enter your cut with a point, enter it with the wing. Enter it with the wing. And again, I can touch that up with sandpaper very easily. Okay, if you're not using the same size screw that I am, or same size drill bit, the way to figure out what size drill bit to use to match to the screw, line them up with each other, and you want to be able to see threads on the other side of the drill bit like that. If your drill bit's so narrow that you're seeing shaft and the threads, then you run the risk of splitting the block as you screw it on. So this bit's probably a little bit too small because I can see the shaft of the screw as well as the threads behind it. So you want at least some of the threads showing on the outside of it when you eyeball them up like that.